Hey, folks, Zach Osterman here, IU Insider, Indianapolis Star, Mike Niziolek, Movie Herald Times, Indiana 20, Iowa 15. Mike, there was a lot of relief post game. There was, I think it's fair to say, a lot of honesty post game, both good in terms of some of the good Indiana felt it did, a lot of honesty about the bad Indiana felt it, it sort of put on the field today. But I think more than anything else, this felt like this team, in a lot of ways, learning to win. It was interesting to me the number of times that we were kind of reminded, whether it was Kurt Signetti talking about how really JMU he has a coached in a lot of close games. Pat Coogan talking about, well, I was in some of these games at Notre Dame. Fernando Mendoza talking about, hey, I lost a few of these games at Cal. This felt like a team learning to win. This team learning to win together this season. Last year, when Indiana beats Michigan by the same score, it feels very sort of, it feels like a crowning moment, a validating moment. You've talked about that's Indiana's first 10-win season. It's 10-0. It's probably the win that ultimately seals their playoff inclusion. This is different. This is at Kinnick. Right. Iowa's maybe doesn't have quite the NFL talent Michigan had, but it's probably a better overall team, I would suggest, certainly at home. And this felt like this team, through a lot of adversity, some of it self-created, learning how to win a game like this in what might turn out to be a really sort of valuable lesson.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you turned to me as like, have they ever been down at halftime, before like this and come back to win?
Mm-hmm.
They faced kind of even a tie game at halftime. I mean, it's just.
I don't think they've been tied.
No. And so,
small samples.
The two losses they had were games that they really weren't in at halftime or lopsided. So, I mean, this was an important sort of moment. I felt like, because you kind of come out of this and you lose it, you go into the bye, and that's going to hang over your heads. You got Oregon. I mean, that's a lot to take. I think now you really feel good about yourselves in terms of like, yeah, the way I phrased the question to Kurt Signetti when I asked about, kind of what can this do for you going forward is like, he's going to find a long list of things, even in just the 2-minute drill, execution wise, that we're very lacking and want back. I mean, Fernando Mendoza threw an interception. The defense allowed the Iowa to get into field goal range. I mean, the only reason they were in this, they had the chance to win it, when the game was tied, is because Iowa missed a field goal. So he's going to find all that, but ultimately, he said it was a gut check, and they came out the other side of it and won and found a way to win and found a way to make the winning plays, even if a little luck was involved and you missed a field goal. That happens in football.
Yeah, that's not luck. That's execution. But but it's not luck in the sense that the other team's got to make that play.
Yes.
Like and listen, we don't have to go on and on about the old Indiana, because in many ways I actually feel like the old. No, I mean just in general. Okay. I don't mean. I actually think tonight really wasn't about quote unquote the old Indiana. I think it was about this Indiana. But Indiana fans have seen their team on the losing side of a lot of games.
I think for fans, they can make those comparisons.
Yes.
I mean, these players have no context for that. Most of these players, I mean, was anybody around in 21 even left?
There's a small hand. Benson was on that team. Bryson Bonds was on that team.
He's obviously not.
Yeah, there are, I think, one or two others that might have been like walk-ons. It's not many.
So, I mean, I think that's more for fans that it's like, oh, we went down this road before and this is how it ends. Like, this is not the same thing, right? Like, they pulled out a tough game in a tough environment. Have to be feeling, you mentioned kind of relief. I think Kurt Signetti did sound a little bit relieved to be 5-0 after all what they went through in that final 2 minutes. But to have this sort of win on their, as part of their resume, they have to feel good about it.
They've not won in a place like this under Kurt Signetti. That's the other part of it.
Although you kind of talked up Michigan State last year.
Well, no, but Spartan Stadium can be tough.
Yeah.
But we got there, and once Indiana kind of turned it on, that crowd checked out because they knew, they knew what the difference was. This one didn't.
Yeah.
Kinnick Stadium, Iowa's now lost 11 straight games against ranked teams. Only 2 of those, though, have been here. And you could feel, this crowd knows the assignment when a game starts going the way. This is how Iowa tends to upset teams at home. When you think about, there was the 2017 Ohio State game where they scored 55, but I think there was a 14-13 against Michigan. I think there was a 20-17 against Penn State, or 21-17 against Penn State. This is what it looks like when Iowa drags you into, if I can wax poetic for a moment, this is what it looks like when Iowa drags you into a dogfight. at Kinnick Stadium. And these fans know that. They
Yeah.
respond specifically to, they are well aware of what they're watching when they see a game like this. When you've got the high-flying offense and all the gaudy numbers and all the press and the ranking next to your name, and Iowa drags you into a rock fight, low-scoring, body blows kind of game. Iowa wins games like this in a dogfight. And if I may wax poetic, as I said, Indiana turned out to be the dog today. And that doesn't happen with this program very often. And I think that is,
So what's the dog fighting in your analogy?
well, the dog.
Aren't they dogs fighting each other?
Well,
Or
the bigger
fighting
dog, the tougher dog. How's that?
a Hawkeye?
Well, the dog might not get the Hawkeye if the Hawkeye just flies away.
This is going kind of off the rails. I don't.
You're taking it off the rails.
Making.
No, I'm making an important point. You are, I don't know, writing about gambling.
Dog DAWG.
Dog.
Dog.
With the meme with the with the.
I don't. You know, where do we go? Look. You kind of mentioned Iowa turning this into a game. I mean, you joked an hour into it. I think it was like a minute left in the second half, and in the same kind of time frame last week, we weren't even out of the first quarter. It showed you how much that Iowa turned this game into an Iowa game.
You know what? The problem with that is we got so many commercial breaks in the second half because they sell.
We did, but it still ended very quickly. I mean, it still
Yeah.
ended much sooner than that game we got last week. But my point was that Iowa turned this into an Iowa game, especially in the first half. Chris again, he talked about looking at the stat sheet at halftime and being stunned.
Eastern Front football is an excellent way to describe Iowa.
to being stunned by the fact that they only had attempted 8 passes in the first half. Like, where did all that time go? Where did they didn't have any possessions. And so they turned it into their game. I thought Indiana had opportunities that they didn't capitalize. That fourth down in the first half really loomed large. I felt like, because the game, the way it's set up, they get the interception 2 plays in, score 2 plays after that. This looked like you felt like, oh man, they're just going to keep continuing off that Illinois game. Like, this is going to go, but Iowa slowed them down, and then Indiana's offense just could never get in a rhythm.
I mean,
but Iowa turned it into their game.
Kirk Ferentz' message at halftime is probably they didn't get anything we didn't give them because they only get that field goal at the end because of the roughing call too.
Right, too long,
First.
and not on Roman Hemby, like him breaking 5 tackles on that one play, which they had more broken tackles on that one play than they had in the entire first half. So it turned into their game, and Indiana said we can win that way too. I mean, because their defense, I thought, will get overshadowed because of the Mendoza to Surratt touchdown that won it. Is this defense? Kept them in the game, really. I mean, some of the coverage it wasn't great, but I mean, like, shut down the run.
Well, even then, they allowed 192 yards on 38 attempts. I mean, that's a very good. Like, Iowa averaged 4.1 yards per play and 8 yards per completion.
But you still felt like it was too much based on
because that's an Iowa game, and the thing is, this is an Iowa box score.
Yeah,
the 2 teams combined for 6 penalties. Iowa turned it over twice. Indiana turned it over once. It's worth saying that is as many turnovers as Iowa had coming into the game. Indiana popped, in fairness, to IU, and I know the final rushing number is a little bit wonky because of that like 40-yard safety at the end. IU popped 6 rushes at 10+ yards in this game against a defense that had only allowed 4 all season. This was an Iowa game, and Indiana won it. And listen, we both, I feel like both of our pregame advances got really validated here because Coogan, from your perspective, Pat Coogan's the one that's leading that huddle on the sideline at the end of the third quarter when Mendoza gets hit going out of bounds and there's this huge scrum and the officials are sorting through whether there's any after sort of to deal with any consequences. And it's Coogan that leads that huddle. And actually, it kind of, it sounded like, while I think it was passionate, he almost described it to me as like more like trying to calm us down, bring us together. It was less like fire and
it wasn't like I need to get these guys fired up.
It was more like we zero in, we focus.
Look, we haven't played good. We can win this game without playing very good.
And I wrote, so first of all, read the Pat Coogan feature because then he comes in the post game and gives just like a dozen amazing quotes. And I wrote that winning games like this at Kinnick is a rite of passage for good Big Ten teams.
Yeah.
Like there are years where Iowa's 4-8 and they lose a couple games at Kinnick, but Iowa teams like this one, they'll go 8-4, but there will be at least one or two of the 8 where they beat a team that's probably more talented than them, but they bring them in here and the crowd's tough and the noise is too much. Signetti talked in those short yardage plays, both the runs and the late pass. He said Fernando Mendoza didn't have any checks to get out of that stuff. They did not want to be calling audibles at the line of scrimmage with the crowd noise. They didn't want to be calling audibles where things might get miscommunicated because people couldn't hear. It just, it felt like Indiana proved something, certainly to the conference, but I feel like importantly, I kept coming back to this idea that this group learned to win this way today. That some of these guys were with Kurt Signetti, and he's saying we didn't have to play a lot of games like this at James.
Well, he said the last time that he's had that in his career was at Elon.
His first year they won 8 straight games, all of them by 1 possession. We've talked, he's talked, we've talked. Fernando Mendoza was one of the players post game that talked about how there are a lot of guys on this team that maybe came from somewhere else this year, didn't do a lot of winning, not a lot of experience with winning. Maybe they were playing for a 500 team or a 7-5 team, probably weren't on a team that was winning games like this in environments like this against teams like this. It just felt like gut check is one of the many phrases that I think would adequately sum this game up. It felt like a very formative moment for this team that if it winds up doing what it hopes it can do, what it believes it can do, what we think might be possible, then Braden, don't worry, he'll do it later. Then this feels like the kind of game we will look back on and say it was very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we talk about the next couple road environments they have up. I mean, in terms of playing at Oregon and playing at Penn State, I mean, this is what they're going to face. So, I mean, this is exactly what they needed to do, and a kind of experience, because it was a mistake-filled game. They did not even play close to their best, and they still won. And I think that's what to your point, what Pat Coogan was talking about. He's like, this wasn't the best version of Indiana, and a lot of it was self-inflicted, and we still came out and showed what we can do. And so it's important. I think we can talk about Mendoza. Something else we talked about kind of in the pregame on the podcast, actually, kind of talked about the running game. And it's a lot easier, and I think we're validating my point that it's a lot easier to play quarterback when you're at run games averaging 7 yards per carry than versus what they did tonight. Roman Hemby ended up having a decent line, but man, it was hard fought because a couple of those, it was really
kind of breaking some tackles. Yeah,
at the end. But I mean, for much of the game, they struggled, and then the pass protection wasn't great. But Mendoza even said when he got a clean pocket, he got kind of shook a little bit, and Signetti referenced this as too, started falling back into bad habits.
Yeah.
And so he said, Signetti pointed even to just the first play of the game. Was it first play of the game or second play of the game? I think it was second play of the game where they gave up that sack. Bray Lynch.
Second play of the game was the Omar Cooper touchdown.
Or the first third down of the game. Sorry.
Okay.
Bray Lynch gave up the sack, and he said after that, everybody's out of sorts.
Yeah.
And never really could recover. And so, he makes the game-winning throw and comes back, and obviously he'll get a lot of credit for that. But in the middle of the game, I mean, through those 4 quarters, it was a rough outing, was not in sync with his receivers, underthrew a touchdown that should have been to Omar Cooper, that if he had let him, would have been a score. Had a conversion for a third down at midfield to Elijah Surratt that he threw behind him. Those were automatic the last 2 games. He only had 3 incompletions combined in those 2 weeks. What did you make of his game? I mean, obviously, the game winner overshadows everything, but Mendoza, what say you tonight?
So Yannet's quote was, we left a lot of plays out there in the past game. There's some bad stuff on that tape. I think you're allowed to play that way in this environment. Even with the ACC experience, I would have to go back and look, obviously, but I'm guessing he did not play
Pac-12
in the he had 1 year in the Pac-12 and then 1 year in the ACC. I'm guessing he did not play in many stadiums like this. I'm certainly guessing
played at Auburn, and then they played. That was probably it.
Yeah, I think that because they played Miami at home.
Miami's at home.
And I don't know what he did in that. I don't know what he did in that redshirt freshman year, like where they went in that redshirt freshman year.
He played at Auburn, Oregon, I think. But,
Oregon, okay.
But we'll see.
So the point is, has not seen a lot of environments like this. Has not seen a lot of defenses like this. I think you are allowed to look at a quarterback and say, in a game that's played on Iowa's
Played
turf,
at Florida State. That's a tough place to play. And then,
that was a terrible Florida State team. Though.
but that was early in the season. That was still in non-conference. So
I think they were 0.
Were they?
I think that was their first win.
His first start. I think his first or one of his first career start was at Oregon. So
Okay,
that's
yeah.
tough.
So he's seen some. Yeah, certainly has not at Indiana. On the one hand, he was the first one to say that was nowhere near good enough. On the other hand, like 233 yards and 2 touchdowns in a winning effort on the road, you can live with that. Like you can live with that if you can, and you can live with that if you get better from it. And that's where it comes back to, like, we are constantly looking for context in these results. The press box was watching the Illinois USC game pretty closely before this one started, because we were all wondering, hey, that looked like a really impressive win from Indiana last weekend, but what if Illinois turns around and lays an egg at home against USC? Well, then suddenly that feels a little bit like the Nebraska game last year, and maybe that team's not as good, but now Illinois, if they beat Purdue, they're 5-1, and that looks like a good win. I just think, like, you can live with it for tonight. There's clearly a lot to improve on. You can forgive certain mistakes as a function of the opponent, as a function of
their game plan.
The
pass protection,
where this game takes place, etc. And I think more than anything else, if you're Kurt Signetti, you feel good when the bus pulls away tonight, thinking, I got 233 and 2 scores from him. We won the game, and I don't think he played his best. Or anywhere near his best. Like, he doesn't. Kurt Signetti's not looking at it and saying we squeezed every ounce out of the quarterback position out of the pass game we possibly could today.
Yeah. Well, but I do think it is with big road games coming up still, and if he reverts to bad habits so quickly in a game, you've got to get that fixed. Because I mean, this wasn't like fourth quarter he makes a bad throw, then he gets like this was. They spent kind of 3 quarters kind of just stuck in neutral, essentially. They get that field goal at the half. But I mean, like we said, Iowa gave them a bunch of stuff. Their first touchdown came with 2 completions. They were in the red zone basically when the drive started. Like, they had one extended drive, really. And so, like, I just think it's a concern when both of them say, yes, he fell back into bad habits so quickly because of the fact that you're going to be in those big environments coming up pretty soon, 2 weeks after a bye. And just, like you said, this was his first road game test, and that's how it goes. Yes, ultimately he has the talent to overcome, and you can see it. Even, hit some really good throws in the fourth quarter. Like, that's the guy that, was talking about as a Heisman candidate last week. But I do think, you are a little worried. I do think it still leaves those question marks, like, can he play more consistently on the road?
Yeah,
especially when there's pressure.
I guess leaves those question marks is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I don't know that you would have expected to walk out of here with all your questions answered. Does that make sense?
No, but no, absolutely not. Because I think the run game then becomes still, like, I mean, you're looking at it and saying, like, man, really came back down to earth, same kind of thing. So, like, yeah, you weren't going to answer any, but I think people thought Mendoza was ahead of schedule. And maybe this, like, they were already announcing him. I mean, everyone was saying it was the first pick.
That's okay. Let's be really clear. Let's be really fair about who's saying that.
Okay.
Well, I mean, like, it's
the general consent. There was quite a buzz this week.
Sure, no doubt.
And I think this sort of said he has some room to grow still.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And if your quarterback throws for 233 and 2 scores at Iowa and still has room to grow, like, they didn't win the game in spite of Fernando Mendoza. They won the game because of him.
Yeah.
Even though he was far from what we saw against Indiana State, against Illinois, against Kennesaw State, whatever, what we saw at times last season at Cal, they still won the game because of Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah.
And not just that one throw, not just the Elijah Surratt throw.
Do you think also that other teams knowing, like, if it's noisy, they're not going to check out of things is a bad thing?
Maybe. I mean, I think that
was
honestly, like,
a wrinkle to it, just because the idea, like, because you had said, they fell short on 2 4th downs where,
I'd be curious to ask, like, Ryan Day how much leash he would give Will Howard to check out of something at Penn State, because I don't know, because I've never asked Ohio State.
It's just an interesting thing, right? Like, it's like, what will teams do now with this?
Because Signetti, it's worth saying, Signetti will share things that other coaches might just, like, mask with a cliche. Like, another coach might in his head think we're not all like
On a Monday he wouldn't have shared that.
Yeah, but post game he will be a little bit more honest than the average.
Yeah.
Like he'll say something that maybe like you said on a Monday maybe he wouldn't. Whereas other coaches might pivot to some cliche like, oh, everybody had a hand in it, and we believed we could make the play and whatever else. I like I said, I think the most fundamental piece of this to me is you won this game because of Fernando Mendoza, not in spite of Fernando. Like, think about the other game Iowa lost this year. Cyhawk Trophy. Rocco Becht had like 140 something and a touchdown. Rocco Becht, I don't know exactly how that game played out, but Rocco Becht did not win that game for Indiana. Fernando Mendoza won this game.
He definitely didn't win it for Indiana.
Indiana won the Cyhawk Trophy. What a season! First time
they got all the trophies. They had to forfeit all their rivalry.
What can't Signetti do?
They had to forfeit all their rivalry trophies.
He's winning other teams' rivalry games now. But my point is, Indiana won today because of Fernando Mendoza. They won because of other people too. Don't get me wrong.
Zerrod had a big hand in that last play.
Yes, he did
break the tackle to him.
But like it's Mendoza. It's Mendoza who has faced zero coverage, zero blitz coverage, which is where they leave nobody at the back, and they're blitzing one more player than you're leaving in protection. It's Fernando Mendoza who's faced that all day, who threw an interception against it at one point, who's been sacked against it, who's watched runs get stuffed against it on 2 4th downs, not 1 but 2, and he stands in, he takes the hit, and he I mean, it's one of those passes that's easy if a quarterback turns his brain off and throws it like it's spring ball. Like it's, he's thrown that pass 500 times to Elijah Surratt since he got to Indiana, but he's thrown it 499 times when he knows he's not going to get hit.
Right.
And he threw it once today after everything, after the hard hit on the sidelines at the end of the third quarter, after the pick, after the failed 4th downs, all that. He threw it knowing exactly what was coming to him. And the whole, yes, Surratt gets the yards after catch, but that
broke a tackle too.
Yeah, well, yes, or sorry, yards after contact is what I meant. But the player that makes that play is the quarterback, because he knows the pressure's coming and the ball has to go to an exact place. And give Surratt credit for breaking the tackle, but the play is designed to create that outcome if the ball's delivered.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm just saying that he could have gotten tripped up and he didn't. And you talked about, I think, even earlier in that, I think it was that drive that he broke 4 tackles.
It was that little sit route where he caught it.
And he's just a guy he's had a habit. I think, like I said, I think earlier this week, he's become just a true possession receiver. That's just a guy that's just moving the chains constantly. Not a lot of, this was a flashy play, but he hadn't had a lot of those this season. More just sort of like 8 yards, I'm getting it, and I'm moving it 5 yards more. But he did a lot of that today, and accounted for more than half of the production. 132 yards on 6 catches. Anything else?
No, I think that the one thing that the whole body of work does is validate what Indiana said through the offseason, which is we believe we can go back to the playoff. And they've obviously still got work to do. And what this does, if nothing else, is this allows them to go 5-2 down the stretch and still have, in all likelihood, a decent playoff.
Yeah, you have to twist yourself in knots to try to make an argument that if they go 5-2 down the stretch and lose reasonably close games to not get to pants like they did to Illinois. That you'd have to really twist yourself in pretzels.
I'm not sure I say that on the podcast.
Twist yourself in pretzels to eat them out of the postseason.
You do need, just like Illinois last week, Indiana fans need to be big Iowa fans going forward. And I don't know what Iowa's schedule is from here. But the more success Illinois and Iowa have, the stronger Indiana's gets from here.
But the point is, Illinois did its job today. They beat a USC team.
Yes. The point is, if you're Indiana, you've given yourself the platform to go do that again. We said they almost certainly needed to start 5-0, and then if they can pick off one of those other 2 big road games, fine. They obviously need to win out at home. They need to win at Maryland and so forth.
It also takes the pressure off those games, right? Because if they had came out of this,
they would
have had so much on their shoulders going into Oregon, and then the Penn State game would have amped up even further because they know people are going to count this against us and say we don't belong.
Mm-hmm.
And so
it validates a lot of what they believe about themselves, and it just gives them that platform. We talk so much about the schedule and how it shapes up and how it's like these first 5 games are almost like a season unto themselves, and then you get the first bye, and then you get Oregon, and then you have a couple home games and a little bit of runway that builds you up to your Maryland and your Penn State. you gotta handle that turn well, and then you get what another. I think it is the bye. The bye's before Wisconsin, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah, but either way, we said this first part of the season, Indiana needed to be 5-0. If it wanted to have a reasonable, now an unreasonable path could be winning at Autzen or winning at Beaver, but it needed to have a reasonable path to five and or to the playoff. It needed to go 5-0 in the stretch, and they've done it. And in fairness, they have done it with, to your point about twisting stuff in knots, some style. They absolutely buried Illinois, and they came on the road in a really tough environment at Kinnick, and they beat what is at least a decent Iowa team, maybe better than decent. We will find out. They have done credit to themselves while winning these games, and the committee, I think that's important for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree. We good.
We good?
I
All
think
right, we got a lot to do. We got to drive back to the Quad Cities tonight once we're done. He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman. We will be back next week. The bye will be quiet. I don't think Kurt Signetti will do a press conference. There will be basketball media day, men's basketball, women's basketball media day. What is it, Monday?
Tuesday.
So Monday or Tuesday, but early next week we'll hear more from Darren DeVries and from Terry Moore, and I assume as well. I haven't seen the women's basketball media day schedule yet. One way or the other, that'll be on tap for next week, and then the week after that is Oregon, a game that, especially if Oregon wins tonight, is going to be
Huge.
one of the biggest, really, in Indiana history, probably. He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman. Thank you so much for watching, for listening to Mind Your Banners. Indiana 20, Iowa 15. Hoosiers are 5-0. Bye week, then Oregon at Oregon. We'll talk to you soon.